What is up, y'all? It is your host, Rennie, and you're listening to another episode of the Call Me Crazy podcast. We're here.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited too.
I'm excited for your expertise, and just because, you know, I'm so passionate about the topics that we're going to talk about today. And so getting someone with a professional opinion, because everyone's got an opinion, right?
Yeah, and I think professional opinion is important, but also what I like to think about psychology and as a psychologist is that every psychologist brings a different skill set to the table and a different background, theoretical influence, and it's a little bit like artwork in that sense.
Yeah.
So maybe there's another psychologist that would offer a completely different perspective, but I think, you know, the topic of love in general draws a lot of opinions and attention.
For sure. And it's something that I feel like most people know play a big role in your life. But for me specifically, I'm like hyper aware of the fact that it kind of dictates my day to day, you know, how I go about literally everything, even business.
I think it actually dictates everybody's.
Yeah.
But it's just whether people are conscious of it or not.
Yeah, exactly. So I have Taylor here today. She is actually closing out the Mahal Kita series. And so the Mahal Kita series is the I Love You series. Yep. That's a translation from Filipino to English. I came out with jewelry collection, which I'm wearing right now. I'm wearing the Elise earrings and the Sola necklace. So I wanted to tie it all in together. I was like, I want to talk about love on the podcast right now. I'm coming out with this jewelry collection. Why not unite the two? It just seems too easy. So I'm so glad to have Taylor here. We met through Joyride, which is no longer, but was a great establishment when it was, you know, doing its thing.
Talk about a place that fostered a lot of love.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. So shout out to the owners of Joyride, because without them, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today.
I don't think I would be confident enough to be sitting here with you today without the owners of Joyride. So
yeah. And just that experience in general for you.
Yeah.
What is your definition of love?
I think it's a complicated question. I think love can be a little bit of everything, but if I had to boil it down, love is unconditional respect and caring for someone or something. And I think unconditional is really key.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like I can't even love unconditionally at this point in my life. There's kind of conditions on everything I love besides my dogs and my younger siblings.
Don't you think, though, that animals, I think, actually teach us unconditional love in such a unique way?
Oh my gosh.
Because, first of all, they can't verbalize their love for us, but we know we feel it. And they require so little, but give us so much.
So much.
In return.
So much.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like those are the only beings, you know, besides my younger siblings that I truly unconditionally love, because everyone else, I have conditions, I have boundaries.
Yep.
I can't love you to the extent I wish I could love you, because then it would be taking away from me and what I need to do for me in my life. So it's very interesting that you said unconditional. Who do you...
Well, and you brought up boundaries.
Yeah.
Which could be a whole podcast episode within itself. I don't think that boundaries limit unconditional love. I think they actually foster unconditional love.
Oh, interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because boundaries, yes, are meant to protect ourselves to a degree, but they're also important for recognizing our own feelings. Right? So, like, let's say you call your best friend and you just immediately want to start venting, but she says to you, I'm really not in the headspace right now to hear this. To me, that's not an I don't love you. It's an I need to respect myself first right now, so that I can show up for you later. And that is part of unconditional love, is like, doesn't mean just giving yourself
all the
freely.
time. Yeah.
It's a balance.
So what would you consider conditional love then?
Conditional love would be something like, I'll only love you if you look a certain way. I'll only love you when you act this way. When you're serving a need for me.
That changes my perspective completely. Yeah, because I don't have any of that. I have, my conditions are, you have to show up for me in some way. I can't give you a part of me, my time, my love, my energy, without you showing up for me in some way. So, you know, whether that's shooting me a checking in text or call, whether that's, you know, making me a meal to make, you know, one part of my week easier, whether that's, you know, it literally could be 1,000,001 different things from what I do for you. But there has to be, you know, reciprocated energy at the end of the day for me. And then I also can't love you, you know, unconditionally if you're doing things to hurt yourself. That's when, like, I have to step back.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, as a person who loves you, I can't love you through that. I can't support you through any and everything that you do if it's, you know, so clearly detrimental to your health, to your well-being, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets really tricky, right? To me, I can still love somebody through that, but maybe I'm not going to show up for them the way they're expecting, but the way that I can handle in that moment, right? So let's say, like, to use an example of, like, you're watching somebody go through a really negative relationship or something, right? I can be there for you, and I can offer to lend an ear, but there's going to be times where I can't be that. And it doesn't mean that I stop loving you, and it doesn't mean that I supplement in a different way. Maybe it is that I'm going to, like, drop off coffee to your house one morning this week because, like, I still care about you and I still love you, but it also is hurting me to watch you go through this.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I say that also because knowing some of your experiences, like, it's probably hard watching somebody else go through something that either you don't agree with or you're watching them, like, not get out of a situation. I think where the love comes in for me is the difference between, are you passing judgment on me for going through this in the way that I am? Or are you just supporting me from a step back?
Afar, yeah. I always try to make my space and the energy I give a judgment-free zone, Planet Fitness, like, you know. So I hope that comes across for any and all of the people in my life, that I'm never judging you. I'm just hoping that, you know, maybe my silence and maybe, you know, my retreat is helping you have room to see a little bit clearer, or hold a mirror to yourself.
Well, and as much as we deserve to give unconditional love to the people that we deem worthy of it, it doesn't mean that you sacrifice your own unconditional love.
Yeah.
So if something does become too detrimental for you to be around, it's okay to say, I got to take a step back here and take care of myself first.
Yeah. Who do you think of when you think about unconditional love?
I think of a lot of people. I actually think that the older I've gotten, the more I recognize how many people I have in my life that really love me quite a bit and care for me quite a bit. I mean, first and foremost, I probably think of my husband. And then I think of my family, my friends, coworkers. I mean, I think that because I view love in such a, like, everybody offers love in their own way, I can recognize those small things that people do that say, I love you, even if they're not outright saying, I love you. So I think it's hard to pinpoint one specific person, but I feel very blessed. Do you think of a specific person?
When I think of love, I always think about my dogs. Like they fill me up in a way that not one thing or not one person does for me. We have a bond and a love, and they have a bond and a love with each other that is just so magical and amazing. And we're all very codependent on each other. I feel like we all get our best sleep together. And just again, like you said, and like, you know, everyone says, dogs don't need much, and they give you so much, you know?
Yeah.
And that is the purest form of love that I have currently in my life.
Yeah.
Miss Cannoli always. She's like, huzzah! Yeah. I second that. Thank you.
She's like, I do love you all. I have nothing for you, Mama. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think, I don't know, as I've gotten older, and I think in the line of work that I do, it's love and gratitude go hand in hand. And so something that I've learned about love is that I can't, and this is really, really hard, and it's like a daily practice for me. I can't expect somebody to show up in a way that they're not capable of physically, mentally, and emotionally. And as soon as I set that expectation, then I somehow get disappointed.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I'm sacrificing respect by not setting that expectation, but it makes it a lot easier for me to accept the love that they are able to give me rather than the love that maybe I want from them and how I want it.
Right.
And so I think in your other podcast, you've talked about like love languages and how like what happens if like one person shows love this way, but you choose to feel love another way.
Right.
That mismatch can kind of cause some turmoil sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes I speak too much, but then I'm like, listen, if I talk too much, if I try to express this to you in more ways than one, then, you know, I might be a chatty Cathy, but I've also just expressed myself to the fullest extent. So you can't get anything I say twisted or any expectations I have. And not to say that the expectations I have for you to be in my life are low by any means, but I think they're all very like easy and they're all very, you know, common, but again, common sense isn't all that common. Right. So I don't feel like I ask for much, but usually people can't even do that. So
well, and I think that's where it comes down to who do you surround yourself with, right? Like you get to choose your friends and the people you surround yourself with. We don't get to choose our family.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like when it comes to family,
yeah,
you just manage. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting at with like setting the expectation of like what is that person actually capable of giving me versus what do I need and what do I want. And if I'm not getting that need met from parent, aunt, uncle, family member, sister, brother, whoever, where else am I getting it from instead?
Right. I feel like something that's great too is you can limit time with everybody.
Yes, you can. Yep.
So like you can't choose who, you know, you grow up with. You can't choose who your family is, but you can choose the amount of energy and time you spend with everyone in your life. And I think that's a way that I have helped myself is just protecting my peace and not giving my time to anything that I don't want to. So at the end of the day, I can go to sleep a happy person because guess what? I said no to something I didn't want to do. I said yes to the thing I did want to do. And I've ended my day, you know, happy and content.
It's really hard for other people to accept those boundaries sometimes though.
It's hard for me.
Yeah.
I hate saying no.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate saying no.
I totally get that.
I just got over making excuses.
Yeah.
Because I used to lie and make excuses.
Yeah.
I mean, not terrible lies, but just because I'm like, this person's gonna challenge this. It can't be just this. Because if it's just I want to take a nap and be alone and eat in my bed alone. It's like, that's weird. Why wouldn't you want to spend time with me? Why wouldn't you want to do me this favor?
Right. It's very challenging for people to understand and accept that boundary. And I think even that's part of love, right? Like, and when somebody doesn't understand it, I think there's a way to speak your piece and saying, this is what I need for myself right now. And if somebody still doesn't accept that, honestly, Rennie, that's their issue at that point. Like, you're doing what you need to do for yourself.
So that's why, you know, this past year has really been a personal self-love journey. I've been very selective with my time. I stopped, you know, making up excuses. You know, I might have said I wanted to do something last week, and it's the end of the week. It's Friday night. I wanna be in the house.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't do it. Although I really wanted to, I just don't have the energy, and that's what I'll say, and that's what I'll do.
I think the pandemic taught me that. I don't think I learned that until the pandemic, because it was like a forced timeout.
Yeah.
It was like a natural boundary. And obviously there was a lot of ups and downs with being in the house and like experiencing all of that, because there's a lot of other emotions tied into it. But I was just talking to a friend this week about, like, there's sometimes that I miss the height of the pandemic, because it made it so much easier to just be like, it's Friday night and I don't want to do anything, and I don't want to say yes, and I need to be in my peace right now. And so now, you know, everybody's faced a little bit with the, like, how do I say no? How do I... And I'm also at a point where, like, I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I'm anxious tonight. I'm overwhelmed. I am too exhausted. This is what I need. I'm sorry we made these plans. I still really want to see you. I don't have it in me right now. It has nothing to do with you. It's really what I need for myself.
I find that a lot of the time, because I'm able to say the things and voice my feelings when feelings like that arise, people will start telling me that and canceling plans. And listen, if you cancel a plan with me that doesn't have to do with business, I swear to God, I'm gonna be happy. Like, there's not one part in, if you catch me before I start getting ready, I am happy as a clam. Like, couldn't be happier. So I feel like whenever my friends are like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, can we reschedule? And I simply am like, don't even worry about it. Like, because it'll happen in due time when it's ready. The worst thing, and the reason why I don't just, you know, put on my boots and my bootstraps and get out and go out the door when I'm not feeling it, is because you don't want this energy around you.
Exactly.
So if you're feeling away, you're feeling overwhelmed, if you know, you forgot something was scheduled and now you're trying to do both at the same time, no.
Yep. I also think there's times where self-love is actually pushing yourself. It depends on the situation, right? Like, but self-love could be, I need to break out of this cycle that I'm in right now and actually surround myself with people that I know are going to care for me and change this mood, or just accept me right now, in whatever state that I'm in, and either support it or help me turn a corner if that's what I need in that moment and I'm looking for. And I think that's where choosing the people that you surround yourself with becomes so important, especially for love. For me personally, if I choose you to be in my circle, because I'm very selective, that means a lot.
Yeah, and I always say, like, I don't mean to come off conceited or...
I don't think that's conceited. I think that's self-respect.
Yeah. I've always had the... I don't know why, but, like, I feel like elementary school, middle school, high school, everyone always said, like, Rennie thinks she's better than people. So I always have this, like, internal dialogue where I always have to disclaim certain things that I say, because I don't want to continue that trope. Not that I care about those people in specific who said it, but I never want people to think that I am that way. You know, I mentioned in a previous podcast that if you're not actually in my life, I don't follow you on Instagram, and people take that like completely out of context as well. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I could give a fuck about my, you know, following to follower ratio. It is simply because like why am I looking at a photo of you and your 4 cousins that I barely know you. I don't know the cousins. Why is this on my timeline? I don't need to, you know, like Instagram is distracting as it is. It's addicting as it is. Like I want to see the people that I care about.
But that's just like choosing to filter. Like you're getting an emotion from Instagram. Like, so you're going to like be selective about what you're looking at and how it feeds your mind and soul in that moment. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think it's conceited to choose who you want to surround yourself with. And it doesn't mean that, like, you know, at some point, at least for me, it doesn't mean that I'm not willing to accept new people into my circle. But I guess my thought is, you know, I'd much rather have like deep, meaningful conversations with the people that I care about, rather than the surfacey bullshit with 100 people. Like if it means I have 3 people, 3 friends, then okay, I'm not going to keep things up just for the sake of keeping things up.
Literally.
I just like, good for you, not for me. And I think that's a lot about self-love too.
Yeah. Do you feel like you can work on self-love while in a relationship or pursuing people and dating?
Yes, because I don't think that anybody ever achieves self-love. You know, like it's not an end goal. Like, all right, cool. Today I love myself and that's it. From here on out, I think for every age, for every week, for every new challenge, there is like a different level
challenge,
of self-love.
Obstacle.
For me personally, like we're sitting here like talking about like all these things that we've put in place to help with self-love, but it's a daily work in progress for me.
100%. I mean, I just view mental health in that way.
1,000%.
Mental health, physical health, everything, right? Because your body's constantly changing, your mind's constantly changing, you know, the air around us is constantly changing. Literally everything is changing all the time. So this will create variance in our moods, in, you know, the way our body moves and works. So I definitely believe in the fact that we're constantly evolving and there's no set destination for happiness. There's no set destination for, you know, I don't think any mental illness is really curable. I think it's copable, right?
Totally.
You can acquire more knowledge, more tools, more, you know, coping mechanisms that will help you out. You can change your environment. You can create a life that has little to no, you know, exterior things infiltrating your mind and your happiness, right? You can create a palace of comfort, but there will still be real world problems, real life things that knock you down.
Yeah, and I think actually even that, right? Like at 15, your coping skills may look different than at 25. And maybe at 30, you go back to some of the coping skills you learned at 15, but it's all about the adaptability of these skills and like needing to make sure you have a big toolbox of skills, strategies, or maybe it's just radical acceptance of like, this is where I am. And a strategy is not going to fix this. I just got to feel my way through it.
That's been me lately. That's definitely been me lately, where I'm like, old Rennie would have done this. New Rennie, I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to sit here for a second.
That can be very uncomfortable though.
Yeah. I'm going to sit here for a second. I'm going to, you know, maybe smoke a little weed, and then I'm going to devise a plan.
Yeah.
And old Rennie would have, you know, freaked the fuck out, screamed her head off, maybe punched a wall, vented to someone usually. But new Rennie is like, all right, I'm going to write this down for my therapist. Talk to her on Wednesday. And I'm going to get through it, because I realize with all of this alone time that there's really no point. There's really no point to freaking out, because guess what? It's just me at the end of the day. It's just me at the end of the day. So who's going to get it done? If I punch a wall, I'm going to have to fix the wall. If I break a vase, that's my vase.
Yep. But this is where, and so much of the work that I'm doing, so I work in a school, I work in an alternative high school, and I love working with teenagers. Some days very challenging. But because they're kind of learning the first steps of this, right? And so much of your world as a teenager is dictated by like social circumstances, people around you. You don't really have that much control as a teenager. No. My big message is always control is an illusion. And I say this to my kids, but I'm also like, that's something I work on like every single minute of every single day. But at the end of the day, the only person that you have to come back to is yourself. This is your home. If you are not taking care of this, nothing else matters.
Right.
So it does become so important. Like, yes, your mom can be screaming about this. This friend is upset about this. You may be upset with yourself, but what do you need to do for yourself then to figure out how to move forward? How to take the next steps, how to just maybe feel the uncomfortable feeling and tolerate it.
Yeah, I do go back and forth, because I don't have a set schedule. I make my own schedule with work. I do go back and forth. I'm like, how long do I let myself feel?
I think that's a hard question to answer.
Because I could stay in this bed forever.
Yep.
And realistically, no, I'm not going to, lose my job if I did. I could do work from my bed.
Yep.
But it's not going to be the most productive. It's not going to feel as good. I'm not going to, get fresh air and do the things that I need to do for me. But like, how long is too long? Because I always say I'm a productivity whore. Like, I love checking things off the list. There's nothing I love more than being productive.
Me too.
So any moment is too long. So then I'm like, all right, give yourself grace, Rennie. Take a moment. But I'm like, is this moment how long is too long? How short is too short?
But so what we ultimately end up doing in that moment is comparing, right? Well, like, how long did so-and-so take when they went through this? Or like, I think that's where the judgment and comparison tends to come in. And when you're like, for me, if I'm having those days where I'm like, I need to rest, while I'm sitting on the couch the entire time, I'm like, but I could be doing this, And
so it's not actual rest.
Exactly. And something that has changed my perspective on this a lot is when I was in grad school, I used to listen to Brene Brown's podcast all the time. And in one of her books, I think, I was listening to it, she told this whole long-winded story about she had to go to a conference, she had this roommate that she couldn't stand, and it was like 3 days she had to stay with the roommate. But she asked the question of, is this roommate doing the best they can in this moment? And her immediate reaction is, no, of course not. They're acting like an idiot. But if we start to ask ourselves the question, is this the best that I can do today, based on my current feeling? I still think it's a hard question to answer sometimes. Maybe that is the best we can. Maybe if I, knowing that my body's so tired right now, try to go and do that productive thing, I'm going to half-ass it. Right. I'm not going to enjoy it. It's not really going to feel good to cross it off my list. I'm just going to end up depleting myself more.
Yeah.
And your best looks different from one day to the next. And I think that's what makes it hard. It's like yesterday I was able to run a marathon. Today I can't get out of bed.
Going back to your background and what you specifically do with your degree and how you use it and what kind of patients you see, could you run us through that?
Yeah, so I am a child psychologist. I'm actually, my degree's in school clinical, so I work in a school, but I have private practice on the side. Specifically, I work with kids. I don't work with adults. Say the oldest person that I work with currently is 19 or 20.
Okay, so not only under 18.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, but usually that's because I've held a relationship with them for a long time, so maybe we started working when they were much younger. But provides a very different perspective all the time. I knew that I wanted to work with kids. I was fortunate enough to have my own psychologist as a kid that really changed my
trajectory.
Yeah, just changed my life in general.
That's amazing.
And I was like, I want to be able to give this gift to somebody else too.
Wow.
So it is a very fulfilling career, very stressful. Stressful in the way that emotions are contagious.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
So sometimes it's hard to listen to certain things all day, but it's also about recognizing those emotions and how do you cleanse yourself of those emotions after a difficult session. But I see it as how do you show up as being human for somebody else and having those honest, difficult conversations when they're ready for them, when they're not ready for them, when they just need that connection. But right now, currently, honestly, I work mostly with teenagers. I'm in an alternative high school, so I see teenagers there, and then outside of my private practice, I see mostly teenagers too.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think in terms of love that group is struggling with right now?
Self-love.
Self-love.
For sure, the most. I mean, think about like your teenage years, right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes hard to think about.
No love.
Well, like
no.
And you think that you have self-love, right? But there's no way to know. It's just like hindsight, right? And as a teenager, you also think you know everything. And I kind of like that teenagers think they know everything. It's wildly infuriating sometimes. But you have to take them as they are and like recognize like this is as developed as their brain is.
Right.
This is what they're capable of right now. And so how am I going to support them through it?
Exactly. Yeah. I always say when friends or family or whoever I'm speaking to they're getting down on themselves for one thing or another. And I'm like, you only knew what you knew, you know? You couldn't have known what you know now then.
Right.
Like, yes, we would have loved to have gotten a cheat sheet on life, but
even if you had it, would you have really followed it? Like, not necessarily.
No.
It's like when your parents tell you, don't make the same mistakes that I did. And sure, to a degree, we can like learn from our parents, learn from our friends, watching other people go through something, but sometimes you need to learn for yourself.
Yeah, I truly believe that. In some way or another, you have to be affected by it in order for it to make a real impact on your life and for you to learn that, quote unquote lesson. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
So I would say that self-love is definitely one of the most challenging things that my kids are working through, and really through like not giving themselves enough grace. So the population that I work with at this alternative school, typically people think alternative school, they think very behavioral kids, drug-involved kids, and I would say that we have some of that, but not really so much. A lot of the kids that I work with are very anxious, very depressed, mood disorders, perhaps previous suicide attempts, hospitalizations, and so much of that, I think, comes from a lack of self-love, a lack of control over their environment, and then just naturally like body chemistry as a teenager, which, is not something they have control over. And so how can I give them the necessary skills so that they can learn to love themselves even when they feel broken.
Yeah.
Or that they can't necessarily show up for themselves, and also maybe lack adults to show up for them too.
I feel like a lot of the things that were told to me that might have not made an impact back then, I still hear them ringing in my ear now. So I know, you've been at this work for a long time now, but I just have to say, as someone, as you, and you probably know as well, as someone who has seen so many psychologists, therapists, throughout the years, if it didn't ring true for me then, it still helped me years down the line.
Absolutely. I always say that therapy is about planting a seed, and it's what you choose to water.
Yeah.
Right? And I sometimes say to my kids in sessions, like, you're going to think about this conversation in 10 years. You're going to think about it in 10 months. You're going to think about it, whenever. But that's only because I've also had those experiences too, where like you do come back to those meaningful conversations. And whether it's in like an oh shit moment of like, why didn't I listen? Or it's oh my gosh, I'm still working through this, and that perspective is still like kind of helping me work through it. I think they're important conversations to have. And think about, as a teenager, not that many people are lucky enough to have those difficult conversations, those hard conversations about life, about like more than just get A's, do your best in school. Like, it's about, especially in high school, what are the life lessons you're learning? It's so much more than just like the social media bullshit, the friend bullshit. And I actually think that's what I love about the population I work with at this alternative school, is that they've already had experiences that shed some light on, oh shit, this isn't just about the typical teenage bullshit. It's more than that. And I don't know how I fit into the mold of being a teenager when I've already had these experiences, but everybody else around me can just be like, oh, I only care about the party the next weekend or whatever else.
Wow, I was definitely that kid.
Yeah, me too.
I was definitely that kid.
Me too.
Kids were worried about like, what school are we applying to? And I'm like, am I going to even be alive for going to college?
Yeah.
Genuinely. Like, am I going to be here for that?
Yeah.
So I totally resonate with the population that you help. And, someday I do want to find a way to help those kids too, whether it's speaking, whether it's, showing them what I do in my business and how I became an entrepreneur despite literally wanting to die for most of my life. However I get to infiltrate and to help in that area, I definitely want to explore, because I'm not a professional, but I have an extensive history of mental illness and not feeling like I'm enough or worthy of the life that I currently have, and it'll only continue to get better. So I definitely want to, I've always said, I just like want to come back around to the little girl I was and help her out too.
I resonate in a different way to these kids, because I think I was the kid that was told like all these, like your academics, college, all these things are so important. And not to say that they aren't important to a degree, but to the point where I put myself under so much pressure that I lost sight of the self-worth, self-love, self-acceptance, meeting yourself where you are aspects. And like, even in meeting with a psychologist and like knowing, oh, I have anxiety, it was not recognizing how much that influences every single thing that I do all the time. And so if I can give these kids that knowledge that I didn't necessarily have, to nobody's fault really, then like that's a gift within itself. And honestly, sometimes, Rennie, it's just about connection.
Feeling like someone's genuinely there.
Yeah, that is taking the time out of their day to listen to what you have to say and validate and understand you.
And not listen because this is, first period, first block, and, I get paid to be here.
Right.
So.
Right. My kids sometimes will say things like, well, you have to be here. And I'm like, do you know how little money I'm making? Right
Yeah.
I could be making a lot more money than this. I'm choosing to be here.
Yeah.
So I do think that's important too.
Yeah. Genuinely. And, you know, there's not a lot of funding and not a lot of support in the work that you do. So I definitely commend you for showing up and being there for those kids, because they need you.
Yeah.
They do.
And you know what? It's a mutual relationship though, because as much as I hope that I'm teaching them, I learn a lot in return. And you know, like the stereotype for psychologists is like, you have some kind of fucked up background yourself, and that's how you end up being a psychologist, because you're trying to figure your own shit out. And yes and no, but there's something healing about watching these kids go through certain things, and triggering and traumatic at the same time, and recognizing like, oh shit, I know what that feeling's like, and I can resonate with what they're saying, and it provides different perspective for you too. It is it's a back and forth. It's a true relationship. And I'm not necessarily disclosing to my kids, like, this is how it's impacting me, because this is about them, but I'm taking it in.
Note.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I feel that 100%. And I also feel like whenever I've talked to a therapist or a psychologist, I can almost tell if they've been through it or not by their language, their reaction to certain things. Yeah. And that's not to say you had to have gone through this traumatic experience as well to understand me, but there's a level of like mental distress that someone has to go through to where I'm like, oh, you can help me. Like,
yeah. And so a good example of that is, so there's two schools of thought for psychology. There is the one that like the psychologist is a blank slate, and like, I show no emotion. You don't need to know anything about my personal life. There is a very thick wall between us. And I do think that perspective is important sometimes, because if somebody needs to come in and take up all the energy in the room and feel all their emotions, I don't want them to feel my emotions impacting them.
Right.
However, if a young woman is coming into my office who I can tell has never had somebody validate her experience, and she's telling me a very difficult, traumatic story about her life, and I start to tear up, I'm going to show her that I'm tearing up, because first of all, those aren't fake emotions. No. Those are real, but like, she may also need to recognize like, oh shit, I have been through a lot. That's part of giving yourself grace, is recognizing the things that I'm telling somebody. Yes, I lived them and I may just be rattling them off, but they're real. And they've made me this person that I am now, or they shape my behavior now. And it's important to recognize them. And specifically, I'm thinking of one of my students that I did have a very emotional reaction to one of my first sessions with her. And I almost was uncomfortable showing that I was having these emotions, but what she was sharing with me was so personal and raw that I couldn't hold it in. Right? And I apologized. I was like, I'm sorry that I'm tearing up, but I need you to recognize like how serious this is, what you're sharing with me. And I actually think it immediately bonded us from the moment that we met.
Yeah.
It was like that soul connection of like, I have not lived her experiences. I don't know what it's like, but I can understand to a degree.
And recognize.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of us need, is just like that validation, and sometimes validation that we weren't even seeking. Right. You know, like I remember a year after one of my best friends sexually assaulted me, I told a girlfriend of mine, and she was mortified. And I didn't say I was sexually assaulted. I said, hey, When I went to so-and-so's college, while I was sleeping, like they were touching me, like nothing went inside anything, nothing did anything like that, but they were touching me and they were talking about me in a really like disgusting way while I was like asleep, frozen, paralyzed. And she was like, Rennie, that's sexual assault. That's this is what that is. Like, I'm so upset. I'm so angry. Why didn't you tell me before? Like this is horrible. And I was like, oh, shoot. Like, I didn't even think it was that bad.
But first of all, I'm sorry that you've been through that. And second of all, I do think that sometimes we protect ourselves, right? Like, I can't recognize the seriousness of it because if I have to actually feel all of those emotions, I may crumble. I may not be able to pull myself back together. There is some self-preservation in that, and I think a lot of victims fall into that sometimes. It's not intentionally minimizing for the sake of like, oh, it was nothing.
Right.
It's minimizing to protect yourself.
Right.
And sometimes it takes meeting with somebody that you trust or who's going to give you an honest opinion to bring you back into reality of like, oh my God, I need to recognize and feel the emotions associated with this.
Yeah. So now I kind of want to move into a couple of questions that I have that I want to share for anyone who went through anything similar to what my last relationship was like. I kind of know the answers to these questions, but I feel like for people to hear them who have been through it, for people to hear them who have maybe not been through it but watched a family member, a loved one, a friend go through it, as well as anyone in my life who still have questions about this situation. I kind of wanted, a professional's answers on these questions. So the first one being, can you have PTSD from an abusive relationship?
1,000%. Without a doubt. I actually would think that it's probably more rare to not have some kind of PTSD response, if not like diagnosable PTSD from an abusive relationship. And I know you and I have had like small conversations offline a little bit about some of these experiences, but every relationship that we go through, there are residual effects that trickle down into the next relationship or how we view ourselves. And I don't even mean necessarily romantic relationships. It's just how we show up for any kind of relationship from going forward, right? Like how we trust people. So I think a PTSD response is almost natural at that point because you do have to protect yourself.
Yeah.
It's almost like relearning self-love after an abusive relationship, right? Because think about the amount of self-love it even took for you to get out of the abusive relationship.
Yeah.
That's so difficult to do.
Yeah.
And even recognize that you're in one is difficult to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, something that, and I know that I shared this quote with you, and it's something that I tell my kids a lot. We accept the love we think we deserve. It's from Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is one of my favorite books. That is not to say that you are at fault for being in an abusive relationship. It is never your fault. It may indicate this is the type of love that you really thought you deserved in that moment. Maybe you couldn't see that you deserved more. And so this is what I'm saying now, like, it takes a tremendous amount of self-love to even take the next steps to leave that kind of relationship, because we're also just like completely putting aside the amount of fear, logistics, problem solving. Like there's so much that goes into that.
Yeah, truly. And I think you said it best. I also do love that quote and that book and even the movie rendition of that.
Yeah.
I always say for people who ask me about this situation and this time in my life, I always say, although I didn't deserve what I went through, there was a level of, or lack thereof rather, I didn't have enough self-confidence. I didn't have enough self-worth. I didn't have any of what I have in place today to feel fulfilled within myself. So I was searching for, I was at 50%, searching for another 50%.
Exactly.
And found my exact trauma bond match to do so. And then once I recognized that it was abusive, it was definitely quote unquote too late. I mean, it's never too late because I'm out, right?
For sure. But it does become more challenging at that point. It's not like, I think it's more rare, I guess. If on a first date, somebody physically abused you, right? It's a lot easier to get away in that moment and recognize, whoa, red flag.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to 6 months, a year in, a month in, because there's some connection that's already been formed and you've already received some kind of love and validation that you felt like you needed. Right?
Exactly. And that's when the cycle started. And it just became this constant, you know, fight to make up to I'll never do it again. And then it continued. And then, like you said, it doesn't fully develop right away. So the physical stuff started a couple months in. Well, I mean, the verbal stuff started like a month in. The physical stuff started a couple months in. And then the threats, you know, followed that. So it was like, it didn't give me so much time to gather what was going on and how to leave, because it continued to escalate to a point where I was too scared to do anything at that point. It's interesting though, like there will be days where I think about it and I try to remember my role in it too, because I wasn't the best version of myself. I've said things that I would never say today in that relationship. I've done things that I would never do today in that relationship. So I always go back and forth on if, like, was that really like a version of Rennie, and, you know, we should love all versions of ourselves and accept all versions of ourselves. Maybe not so much love, but accept.
Accept, I think, is key. Yeah.
Or was that a version that came out in response to that situation? Is it a mixture of both?
Do you feel like you have a clear answer to that?
No.
I don't know that you can get one.
Yeah.
I mean, as you're sitting here saying this to me, I'm like, it could be a combination of both.
Yeah.
It's almost like the perfect storm a little bit, because no matter what, any type of relationship, it does take two people. That is not to say somebody deserves abuse by any means. I do believe, though, that we all play a role in every situation that we're in to a degree. Doesn't mean the reactions and the outcomes are always warranted.
Right.
But I think it's appropriate also to reflect and say, like, what went well and what didn't go well, because there's also probably moments that did go well.
Yeah.
That's what connected you to that person in the first place.
Right.
So, and that's even the moment where I say you got to give yourself grace, because it's not like you walked in eyes wide shut and said, I'm going to just push every red flag aside. There was something there that was also feeding your soul too. And sometimes we learn that love is found in dysfunction rather than stability. And if that's what we knew beforehand, whether it's been modeled to us from our parents, our family, what we observed in our lives, it becomes normalized.
Yep.
And when it's normalized, I mean, like, God, especially at like 18, 19 years old, if you don't know any different, how can you set the expectation for yourself that you deserve anything different? That, like, stability isn't boring.
Right. Yeah, I definitely grew up with dysfunction when it comes to love in every form, romantic, familial, in every form. It was demonstrated to me that dysfunction almost was passion synonym, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what it means. Like if you care for someone, you'll go crazy. And I don't know if it's like a New York mentality where it's like if I curse someone out for you, if I beat someone up for you, if I
yeah.
if I get crazy in these streets for you, like that means that I love you.
Yeah. I resonate with that, and it's actually like a running joke in my family. So my parents were divorced from a very young age, and my mom dated throughout my childhood and now, and I'd be lying to you if I said I don't take pride in being a fierce protector of my family. To a fault. Mm-hmm. Like in a detrimental way. And it's taken me a long time to recognize and accept that. And it's a running joke. So for example, if my sister calls me and says like, so-and-so did something, mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, who's going to be in line, right, to go and kick that person's ass, mm-hmm. or to open their mouth and say something. And we joke about it while also recognizing the dysfunction of it. But that's a way of showing your love and loyalty, right? Is like, I'm going to defend you, even if I've known you've done something wrong. It, like, to the nth degree, it doesn't matter. And I do love my family tremendously, and I don't know that I can fully shed that belief. Mm-hmm. I have just tried to find different ways to show up and protect them, and recognizing, right, like we talked about boundaries earlier, I'm never going to protect somebody fully from something if that's what they want and they're choosing to do in that moment.
Yeah. On that same line, right, with the PTSD, how do you think one should go about addressing this in a future relationship? Is this something that needs to be said up front? Is this something that should be said when something arises? How do you suggest, every situation is different, every person is different. There's, two people in a relationship, so those two people are going to be different. But how would you?
Well, I think, first of all, there's no right or wrong answer to this. I think it's about what you're comfortable with, right? Does that mean on a first date you show up and say like, by the way, this is my last experience and I'm going to have all these trauma responses, so good luck dealing with them, right? Like, I don't know that that's the appropriate way. I do think there is, as you gain somebody's trust and they earn your trust, it is important to share what you're comfortable with so that they know that like this could be a trigger for you, that could be a trigger for you. But you asked a question before of, can you grow and learn self-love while in a relationship? This is one of those situations where it's like a certain amount of healing needs to be done outside of the relationship space first, so that you can bring the best version of yourself forward in your current relationship. Nobody's perfect though. You're going to have, something's going to trigger something at some point, right? And it's about being open and honest with yourself first about where this response is coming from. And then how do you bring it to your significant other's attention in a respectful way that makes sure that they still respect you, and we can't control their reaction. But if they don't respect that this is what you've been through, maybe it's a sign that they're not the right person for you going forward. Or maybe it's a sign to you that I need to do some more healing. I need to call my therapist and work through this, because it's also not your partner's responsibility,
right,
to heal you. It is your own responsibility to heal yourself. I believe that two people can grow together. And my personal hope in a relationship is that somebody shows me new ways to grow, right? And that's part of a healthy relationship, is like, how do you push each other and test these boundaries? And how do you learn to set boundaries? Because that's part of the growing process too.
I don't know what in me wants to know the answer to this question. I think it's the person who still cares about my abuser, right?
Sure.
Who still sees the little boy in him that I always saw that kept me around, right?
Sure.
Do abusers like that actually ever love? Like, did they actually ever love you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't know for sure. But I think we learn how to show love, right? So I don't know him I at all, but I don't know what's in his past. But if you look at people that abuse, typically they've experienced some abuse in their own childhood, their own past, and it becomes cyclical.
Yeah.
Right? So like that's how love was shown to you. It's like what we talked about, learning to function on dysfunction. When it's normalized for you, that becomes typical practice.
Right.
And even if he felt shame afterwards, right? Like even that shame becomes typical practice. Like he's got to work through his own cycle, just like you were working through your own at the same time of wanting to break out of it.
Right.
It comes down to how willing is he to love somebody else and love himself to break out of that, and how, you know, even recognize that it exists.
Right.
And what I think is tricky about relationships is you can't force somebody to recognize that that's how they're showing love. I can't sit here and say that an abuser doesn't feel love or isn't trying to show love. I don't think it would be fair of me to say that because I don't know what his experience is like. But there's something that bonded him to you in the first place too.
Right.
So even if for him love is control.
Yeah.
But love is also vulnerable. And when we feel vulnerable, we desperately try to cling to control. Even if it means by demonstrating control in the most violent way.
Yeah, I think I constantly go back and forth with that just because, like I said, you know, I fell in love with this person, and I'm constantly going back and forth between like, was that just a made-up person? Is my mind crazy enough to, you know, dream up something that was never there? Was this something that was there and then left? Like, was it all an illusion? You know,
Right.
I have these thoughts because, not that I am trying to never have it happen again. Nothing's foolproof, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to be as conscious as I can every single day outside of that relationship and outside of any relationship, right? Just being Rennie. Like, I call it like unraveling.
Yeah.
It's kind of like things come up when I'm not provoked by a memory. Things come up when I'm provoked by a memory. Things come up, you know, when someone touches me a certain way. It could be a number of things. And I just call it unraveling because it's kind of remembering things that you blocked out, and going through the emotions and the feelings that you felt during it, but now having an outside perspective. So then it changes that feeling. It's like, okay, that's what I felt like. Wow, it was happening, but this is what it's feeling like, reliving it in the now. So I'm constantly just...
I think also when we understand, it's easier to accept.
Yeah.
Right? So yes, it's for moving forward and control in the next relationship and like knowing what to look for, but it's also when we understand something, it makes it so much easier to move past it. When we don't understand something, and I think regardless of level of abuse, there's certain aspects in a relationship, especially a relationship that ends, you never get the answers to the questions that you want.
True.
Right?
True. It's always wanting closure, that closure.
Yes, and sometimes like even if you got all the closure you think, or like you got the answers, they don't make sense enough.
They don't tie it up in that bow that you wanted it to.
Exactly. So it's about just like accepting it as it is.
So I just want to thank you for being here today and talking through all of these very important topics that we should all be aware of. even if it's just a little bit, you know?
Absolutely. Thank you for being willing to have the conversations, because I think, you know, in doing a podcast like this, it does help people understand and just give them different perspectives, and it's always about planting the seed.
Exactly. So what should we leave them with?
When it comes to love, I'm going to go back to the quote that I said earlier. We accept the love we think we deserve. And I think that's in relationships with other people who we choose to surround ourselves with, but also with the way we feel about ourselves, right? We give ourselves love based on what we think we deserve. And if you can elevate yourself and recognize that you deserve it all, then I think that really shifts your perspective on the love that you will surround yourself with.
Can you name a few things that you do to show your self-love outside of anyone else?
I would say the number one way that I show my self-love is by letting myself feel whatever I'm feeling, and also feeling a tremendous amount of gratitude for what I do have in my life. I think that gratitude has the ability to really shift your perspective, and it's not possible to feel gratitude in every single moment. But even after you go through something difficult, if you can take a step back and say, what has this taught me? I think it really helps us grow and changes our perspective going into the next difficult situation. So I think gratitude and self-love are key.
I think for me, something on a totally different side of the coin that I do to honor my self-love, especially as a child who grew up in poverty, is not holding on to my money for dear life, and, you know, splurging on a massage for myself. Splurging on an ice cream cone instead of being like, listen, if you get the pint of ice cream, it's less expensive than just getting, you know, the Softies ice cream cone that you want with the cookie crunch on top. Like, get it, girl. You know?
Totally. It's all about balance and like giving yourself that small moment to experience that joy that Mr. Softy is going to give you in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many different forms of self-love, and there's so many ways you can give it to yourself. But I think the overarching message that Taylor and I want to hone in on is just that it starts with you.
Yes.
You can't give anyone else love unless you are focusing on the love that you give yourself, and that your cup is, you know, full. I mean, it's so cliche, but I feel like the more we drive this message home, the more it will be apparent to people that the cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yes, they are.
Because they
are.
work and they sum it up.
There's some truth to them for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I so appreciate you being here. I also so appreciate you making my new favorite bag.
I'm excited for you to have it.
I had no idea Miss Taylor made, oh my God, it is thick.
Yeah.
She's gorge.
Yeah.
Look at that shape. It's giving fortune cookie.
Totally.
I love that.
I hope that
my Asiatic side is beaming.
Yes, I hope that it gives you really good luck too.
Oh my gosh, this is incredible. So where can they purchase if they want to purchase?
So I do have an Etsy shop, Dr. Taylor Made, on Etsy, and I do have an Instagram, which typically has more current stuff that, like, if I make a bag that I just am looking to sell in the moment, Dr. Taylor Made on Instagram.
Incredible. I also might need to hire you for some crochet classes.
I would love to do that. I mean, I don't know that I consider myself a crochet expert, but it is something that I've taught some of my students how to do. I mean, I love to sit down and craft all the time. So whether it's crochet, whether it's something else, I'm always down for that.
Incredible. Well, I want you guys to comment down below if there's anything that you want us to talk about in the future, because I love our rapport and I love your insight. So I will think of some things.
I will definitely think of some things for sure.
Yeah. So we will be back. Cannoli will be here. Next time I'll bring my doggies.
Okay.
And there will be a lot more rowdiness in the background. Is there anything else you want to share? Is there a website? Is there...
No, I think if there's any way that I can be a resource to people, even if it's just like, I don't know that I can answer very specific questions all the time as a psychologist without context, but like referring to resources. There are things like BetterHelp if you need help finding a therapist. They work with insurance. That can be really helpful, but I'm all about people getting the support they need, particularly with mental health. So if I can be a resource in any way to helping connect people with that resource, I'm happy to do so.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rennie.